Hello everyone, and welcome to Benjamight Gaming for my very first year-end game review, thoughts, comments, things like that. I haven't ever done something like this on the channel before, but I kind of feel like this was the first year where I played enough games that it would be kind of fun to do like a review at the end and give my thoughts on some of the games and pick some of my favorite games for some categories that I've made up. I got a little list over here off to the side of some different categories, and we're just gonna have a good time talking, reminiscing, talking about some of the things that I liked and didn't like about some games, and hopefully gonna be a really good time without me getting caught up rambling too much. I apologize up front if I do get to rambling, but I will do my best not to let that happen. If by some chance this is your first time finding my channel, welcome. Hope you have a fantastic time. And if you do a really good time, it sure would help me out if you consider hitting that subscribe button. All right, no time to waste. I played over 50 games this year, so let's hop in here and start looking these over. All right, so we are underneath a folder I've created for my Steam account, which is finished games. Now, these are games that I played this year, games that I played in the past, and maybe a couple games that came with like bonus stuff that I will not play on the channel. It's probably been dropped in here just so it's out of my inventory of games that I do still need to play, which we know is a massive list. But thankfully, I did knock out 50 plus games this year. Some of them very short, one-off kind of videos, others that are much more involved or a series of games, and then we definitely played a couple really big games, which was exciting for me. This was the first year where I played multiple games that were like 40 plus episodes, which was really cool. So as I'm working my way down this list, kind of talking about the different games, you might spot some games here that you didn't know I played, and you might be able to find them on the channel. Just thought I'd share that with you right up front. All right, so the first category that I put together are one-off videos. These are games that I sat down and played basically in one setting and kept it as one video. And I played, about a dozen of these this year. One of the first ones I did, Scanner Sombre, I think is what this is called. And this was a pretty fun game. It was like playing Skittles in the dark. It was kind of weird. I thought it was gonna have more of a horror vibe to it, so I was a little bit disappointed when it didn't have more of that kind of a vibe to it. And if you've never played it, it is a good one to pick up. Now, if I remember right, I think I have another one in my queue, and I think it is supposed to be more of a horror vibe, but I haven't played that one yet on the channel. Abzu is another one that I played through this year, which was super cool. Beautiful scenery. You're swimming around. You feel like just like one of the fish that are there. I was very impressed by the amount of variety of fish that were involved in this. Had some cool little puzzles to it. And a very neat story that as you got further, you got to kind of interpret it and see it how you wanted to see it. So Exit 8 was a game that I played just completely on a whim, had no plans to do it, but someone said, hey, there's this popular game just came out, doesn't take too long, you should give it a try. And what was really funny is when I played through this, in the very beginning, it's like I got all the way through it real quick and easy and got out, and I was like, wow, that was kind of quick. I'm gonna play it again and go ahead and find the rest of the differences in the game, not realizing how lucky I got to get all the way through it as quick as I did. So the next several tries took a lot longer to get through, but if I remember right, I think I did end up finding all the differences before I wrapped up the game, which was really cool. Some of those things were very tricky. We Went Back was a treasured horror game of a find. Let me tell you, I forget who it was that recommended it to me, and it sat in my library for a really long time. But if you're in the mood for a short, sweet horror game, this thing does a really good job of creating an very eerie atmosphere. It definitely had a couple jump scares in it that I wasn't ready for. Had a blast with it. If you don't want to play it but just want to watch it, it's on the channel. So The Looker is a game that I played, which is actually like, I guess, a modified version of another puzzle game that is actually out. I don't want to say that it's making fun of it, but it's supposed to be like a parody of a different puzzle game that is out there. But I hadn't played that one, and I played this one first, not knowing that if I hadn't played the other one, some of these jokes are going to go right over my head. I had a good time with it. I ended up really getting kind of stuck towards the end of the puzzle game, but I did get all the way through it. Although I would also like to still go and play the original version of the puzzle game this one's kind of based upon. Please Don't Touch Anything was a good time just unraveling all the little things you could do. You start out with such a simple display, but yet there's so many ways you can unravel. It was really fun. I did not finish all the game. I did not find all the clues, but the ones that I found, it was a good time. Oh my goodness. Thank goodness You're Here turned out to be a blast of a game. Absolutely loved it. I laughed like crazy, just over the top, silly Monty Python kind of humor. Now, I do feel like it dragged on a little bit towards the end. If it was maybe like 30 minutes shorter, I think I would have liked it even more. But all in all, had a great time with it. Highly recommend it if you haven't played it. And if you don't want to play it, just want to watch it, it's on the channel. great time. All right, I played 3 of the Fears to Fathom so far, episodes 1, 2, and 3, and I won't go into a lot of detail about these. The first one is definitely my favorite. It didn't overstay its welcome, it kept the tension right there, and it still felt relevant to what the title was, such as Home Alone. The Hitchhiker one, I feel like it was a bit misleading on where you thought the scares were going to be, and I felt like it was just trying too hard. I don't know. I didn't enjoy the second one very much. The third one definitely brought back a little bit more of a creepy factor, but I think it was also a bit long. The thing about the first one that was so sweet is the fact it was like just the right length, and I'm hoping, I know there's a 4th one and I've bought it, I'm hoping that one gets back to the feel of the first one. So I did play through a Half-Life mod this year, and it was off of Half-Life 2. So it was fun to get to play something that had the nicer, cleaner graphics to it. It was a good time, and it was Half-Life, so you know, you can't go wrong with either of those, right? And the last one-off video game that I played for this year, which was my Christmas special because it's a Christmas game, but man, it's a horror game for sure, is Tattletale. My goodness, that little booger and the atmosphere that it created was so good, so creepy. Oh, I was on edge the whole time. Absolutely love that game. Couldn't recommend it enough for you. Okay, so the next category I got here is lesser known titles. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a indie game. I don't necessarily know which ones would be considered indie and which ones wouldn't, but these are games that I definitely was not aware of. And from what I understand, they're just not huge, well-known games. So these are games that I played through that I consider to be lesser known titles. First up on that list was Brothers, and that was a really good time. I haven't played the remake. I think they just came out with another version of it or a remaster this year, but I played the original and it was so much fun. It was a puzzle game with beautiful scenery, awesome music, and the coordination of learning how to use both joysticks to control 2 different characters at one time was a puzzle experience I hadn't had before. Had some mixed feelings about the ending. I won't say anything out of spoilers, but if you want to see my playthrough of that, I loved it, would still recommend it, but just be prepared, I wasn't a big fan of how they wrapped that game up. So Firewatch is one of the first lesser known, although it is well known, but it is definitely one of the first lesser known titles that I played this year, all the way back towards the beginning of the year, and it was phenomenal. Absolutely loved it. The scenery was great. The story was just heart-wrenching right at the beginning. Was not expecting that. But the voice acting and the dialogue and just playing through the game, oh, it was so good. And they kept having twists and turns that you did not see coming. And from what I understand, there's all kinds of dialogue that you can get in this that'll be different per playthrough based upon the choices that you make in the conversation. So totally worth another playthrough, but that game, it was fantastic. So last year I played through my first Supergiant Games game, and it was Bastion, and it was a really good time. I still think about the voice that was in that game and how sweet it was when you were smashing things. You know what I mean? It was just so good. And this year I played through Transistor. Now I'm currently playing through Hades, the first one. Oh my gosh, this game's on a whole nother level. So good, but that will be something we talk about next year's review. But towards the beginning of this year, I played through Transistor, which was another one of the games. It was really good. It took me a little bit to kind of get the hang of what was going on because it's a very cybernetic world, and the terminology that they use and the attacks that you use, it's all based in that same language, verbiage. And even though I was totally enthralled in what was going on, I was at times very confused by what was going on too. But I figured that's a sign of a good game. If you can be confused about what's going on, maybe not even entirely understand the story, but you're having an absolute blast, that's pretty good. You'll be willing to play a game multiple times if need be to figure it out if you're having a good time with it. Transistor was definitely a good time. So one game that was definitely not graphic heavy was One Shot, and I had a lot of fun with this. I definitely found myself asking questions like, well, how is this going to wrap up? Where are we going to end with this? And it gives you a decision towards the end that's kind of a big deal. Now, from what I understand, there is an alternate ending to this that I have not gone back to get. I've had lots of people request it. Maybe it'll end up on the channel at some point, but One Shot was a really good time. And again, I think it was a game that knew exactly how long to be without overstaying its welcome, and I can totally appreciate that. Not sure if you've ever heard of a game called Icy. Can't even remember who it was that recommended it to me, but it was a really fun, flashy game. Was not very long, had an interesting kind of like semi-story going on. The environment itself really tried to tell you what was happening. You could kind of piece it together. Personally, I think going for the achievements and trying to find the hidden paths that just like were not often found was what I really enjoyed about it. If you're looking for something that's not too crazy challenging, although there are more difficulty settings on it, but just has a crazy flashy factor, This is a great time. Oh boy, Pony Island. I had no idea what I was getting into when I started diving into these Daniel Mullins games, but they were being recommended so strongly, I just had to try them out. Pony Island was my first experience with one of these. It was the weirdest, how could I put this? It was the most organized weird game I've ever played. And for those of you who have played it before, you're probably like, yep, that's one way you could definitely put it. I won't spoil anything for those of you who want to play it, but if you want to watch the playthrough, it was a good time. It's on the channel, which was then followed up by the next Daniel Mullins game that I played called The Hex. This one I feel had a little more direction to it. It was a little easier to follow along with what was going on. Now they did do a good job of really keeping you guessing for a while because things start to crisscross across boundaries that you think it's messing up at first. And then you begin to realize, wait, maybe it's supposed to be doing that, but then you second guess if that's the case. And then you think you know what the answer is, and then it goes a whole different direction. It's pretty impressive. If I were to sum this game up, it's almost like when you go to the mall and there's an arcade center and you got all the different types of games you could play there, the race car games, the fighting games, the shooting games, you got all those games. The Hex is like you took all of those and put them inside of one game. Great time, highly recommend it. Bar Loan Sales was a fun little surprise. It's a very chill game. It's kind of a puzzle game, but not really complicated. I feel like this is like if you wanted to just go out fishing and you didn't really want to catch anything, you just wanted to sit on a lake and enjoy nature. That's kind of like what this game is. Yeah, it's a game, but for the most part, you're just kind of enjoying the ride. It has a couple moments in it that are very intense, very unexpected, very cool, and you really grow attached to this boat, which is like the character in this game. Absolutely love it. Highly recommend it, and I do plan on playing the sequel maybe sometime this next year. Kill It With Fire was a literal blast. I was trying to find something bright and colorful because I think this was like right after Spooktober and I'd played a whole bunch of dark, gritty kind of games. This one was a nice, fun surprise. I do think it was a little long. It started to feel a bit repetitive, and I feel like some of the achievements started to kind of wander away from spiders being the focus. And I've heard there's a second one. There's a chance I might try to play it on the channel. I had fun with Kill It With Fire. I would probably recommend it on a sale. I don't know if I would pay full price for this, and it's not even a very expensive game. But just because it's like after you've gotten past the first few levels, I feel like you've kind of experienced the game, but it goes on several levels past that. Tacoma was also a fun surprise that I got to play this year. It was very story focused, but you're almost coming into it after the fact. It's more like a mystery novel. You show up, you see the scene, the crime, whatever it is that took place. I mean, in this one, you don't necessarily know if there was a crime committed, but you get to this station and you're trying to find out what happened. Are the crew still alive? Are they dead? If they're dead, how did they die? And the whole time you're doing it, you're going around, you're picking up clues, and you're getting videos and audio tapes from the different people that lived here, and you feel like you get to know all these characters. It was beautifully done. It's got a very unique art style. And I gotta say, the way this story ended was so good. So good. Absolutely love this game. It's not super long, but if you don't want to play it, just want to watch it, it's on the channel. It's a great time. Duck Detective: The Secret Salami. This was an interesting game. I thought it was going to be just a bunch of slapstick, silly kind of stuff with a little bit of a puzzle mechanic to it, a little bit of a mystery. But the further I got into the game, the more challenging the detective side of this actually got. It was fun. It did have some slapstick, silly stuff going on, but it actually was a much more challenging game than what I expected. I originally had played this game to make it a one-off video, but after it took me like 3.5 hours to get all the way through it, I was like, okay, I gotta split it up, but wow. It is a good time. Just know up front, if you go into this one, it is a little more challenging than it kind of leads on to be at the very beginning. All right, now this next category, I have been very specific in the wording of this because I don't want to trigger anybody. This is a category I'm calling games that weren't for me. I don't want to say these games are bad, that they're crap or anything like that, because a lot of times not every game is for every person, and what one person may not like, someone else may love. Not to mention, there is a team of people typically behind these that spend a lot of time and a lot of passion putting them together, and I want to always be respectful of that. The first game I'm going to put here, just bear with me, The Walking Dead. It's not everything. It's not all the seasons. It's specifically season 2. I found season 2 so annoying. And that's the only reason I'm putting it on here. It's because it was just so annoying. I loved season 1. It's by far the best one on the list in my opinion so far. And we'll talk a little bit more about The Walking Dead in a in the next category that I got. But for season 2, I didn't quite like it. I found it kind of annoying. The characters just didn't make sense. It was like, I felt like Clementine, who was the kid, was like the adult the whole time. And I'm like, how are any of these adults actually even still alive, acting the way they are in this season? So this is why I'm putting season 2 of The Walking Dead. It was not for me. It wasn't that it was a bad game or anything, it's just that I found it extremely annoying. All right, Stalker fans, don't worry, I'm not gonna bash on this, and from what I understand, a lot of you feel kind of how I felt after this. Stalker Clear Sky. Now, Clear Sky is a prequel to Shadow of Chernobyl, which I actually really enjoyed that one, all the way up until the tail end. There was a spot towards the tail end of that kind of got on my nerves a little bit, but it was a good game overall. Clear Sky started out really cool. I really enjoyed the beginning area, but then the rest of it just felt like I was playing Shadow of Chernobyl again. Slight little twist here and there, and there was definitely one character along the way that I really enjoyed. I wish there had been more with him involved. And as you guys know, I'm playing through Call of Pripyat right now, which is going great. I am absolutely loving that game. And we got Stalker 2 that just dropped a few weeks back, which I'll probably have to play on the channel at some point in 2025. But as far as Clear Sky, not really a game for me. Oh, Mirror's Edge. This game... I still have nightmares from time to time about Mirror's Edge. It was so frustrating to me on a few different levels. I wanted to love this game, and I know there's 2 of them. I thought it was a first and then a sequel. I found out later that the other Mirror's Edge is more like a remake or a remaster of this one. It has a whole new story and all that kind of stuff. But I played the original, and the game started out really cool. I think it was 4 episodes total. The first 2 episodes, I enjoyed it a lot, had a great time. 3rd episode, I started to kind of lose it a little bit, not really enjoying it. By the time I got to the 4th episode, I was like, I just want the game over. I won't beat on that horse in this video, but if you're curious to see why I felt that way, you can jump right to the end of that playthrough. But personally, Mirror's Edge definitely was not for me. Maybe I'll play the sequel at some point. I haven't gotten past this one enough yet to be willing to try the other one. Amnesia the Bunker is a game that I played through for Spooktober this year. I liked the game. Most of the game. I definitely had some ideas and some suggestions towards the end of how I feel like it could have been made better. I found myself comparing this a lot to Soma, which if I were to pick a game of the year for myself for 2023, I know I didn't do one of these in 2023, but for last year, 2023, Soma would have been my game of the year. I did not expect it. It was so good. It was absolutely terrifying. I had never played a game so scary as Soma. Probably still haven't. This one I thought might take the cake on that, but Soma pushed me to an edge that I had never experienced before. But the thing that was cool about Soma was the reward. It was so worth it. The story was fantastic. The chemistry between your 2 main characters was just phenomenal. The Bunker didn't really have that. It had some moments that were really cool, and it started out scary and creepy, and it was extremely atmospheric. It played really well, but about halfway through, I found myself so frustrated that it ruined the game for me. I just kept getting frustrated with the game. And I know that's a fine line. They got a balance between, how much can we frustrate the character before they start to get mad? And that one got me kind of upset. So in the end, I would say that Amnesia the Bunker, not really a game for me. All right, so the next category we got here is games that I played multiple releases of. So if there was a game that I played multiple of that particular series, they're all kind of grouped together right here. I didn't quite know how to group this one together, but I hope that kind of makes sense. Now, technically, I played through Dishonored 1 in 2023, but I played Dishonored 2 in the first of the 2 DLCs in 2024. I really enjoyed Dishonored 2. I feel like they did a great job of coming up with more stealth mechanics, more weapons and stuff you could use, whereas in the first one, I feel like I was kind of lacking on my options because I was trying not to kill people. But in Dishonored 2, they came up with some really fun ways for you to have more variety of attacks and takedowns and things like that you could use and still get the good ending. And I really enjoyed my playthrough of Dishonored 2. I did enjoy the DLC, the first one as well. I do still have one more DLC for that game, which maybe I can put that on the radar to try to play in 2025. So last year I played Dead Space 1 and I started Dead Space 2, but in this year I finished 2, played 3, and played the remake. Now the remake I held off to play for Spooktober, so there was a bit of a gap between there. But this was definitely one of the first times where I almost feel like I wish I would have played the remake of number 1 before playing the original, because the remake of number 1 was gorgeous, gorgeously gory. You know what I mean? That's the best way I can describe it. It was scary, atmospheric, super gross in all the right ways, but it followed the path so well, the original, that I kind of knew a lot of the story beats that were coming already. So I almost feel like I ruined the remake in that aspect, that I kind of already knew the story. I would say out of the original 3 trilogy, number 2 was probably my favorite. The way his wife is like haunting him the whole way through there and everything, it was just like, oh, super creepy. And they had some really gross moments there with some of the creatures. Like, I still remember the baby that explodes and stuff. It was like, oh, it was so gross. Unexpected. I couldn't believe they pushed the envelope as far as they did in that game. Loved it. The remake was great as well, but like I said, I think I kind of ruined that one a little bit for myself by playing the original first. All right, I told you I would circle back to the Walking Dead series because, like I said, this goes underneath the category of where I've played multiple. I played through season 1, season 2, although, you know, that is what it is, 400 Days and A New Frontier. I would say by far, season 1 is my favorite because the characters and the chemistry there were so good. 400 Days was kind of interesting. It took a unique perspective, and I know that they were kind of setting you up for the next one, and I feel like The New Frontier was a better one. I did enjoy it. There were some things that didn't quite make sense, didn't quite connect the story, but it's like we've gotten to watch Clementine grow up, and I feel like that was one of them where we were really seeing her come into her element as a young lady. Now, I know that there's still 2 expansions in this I haven't played yet. Maybe they'll hit the channel this next year. One I think involves Clementine, and the other one I think is about Michonne, but I'm not entirely sure about that one. My oh my, if there was one heart-pumping game that I had not expected to hit me on the level that it did, it was the Doom 2016 and the Doom Eternal games. They were so good. The music was pumping. Everything you did was like, if there was a 10, they made sure you felt like it was a 20. No matter what it was. You punch somebody, you smash something, you jump. It doesn't matter what it was. They found a way to crank the dial up for everything. Absolutely loved it. Doom Eternal is not actually in my finished library yet because I still have the second DLC I've not played for that. And I think the next one, The Dark Ages, is supposed to come out kind of early next year, which I absolutely plan on playing on the channel. So I want to try to knock out that second DLC, hopefully before I get there. I don't think from a story standpoint I have to play this one to play that one because I think it's supposed to be a prequel, but it would be nice to have all the Doom games wrapped up before I dive into that one. But Doom Eternal and Doom 2016, fantastic games. Absolutely loved them. All right, we're jumping out of my finished category here for a minute because I got to bring up Halo. The Master Chief Collection, I absolutely loved. Halo 1, 2, 3. I feel like number 1 started out fantastic and it just got better and it got better. Halo 3, the climax for sure. I still get goosebumps just thinking about that moment when Master Chief finally meets up with Cortana and that moment, the scene that they set up for them, it was just so good. Oh my gosh, I absolutely loved it. But I do still have some more Halos I need to play and I absolutely plan on playing more of those throughout 2025. I gotta tell you, the idea of putting horror and puzzles together is a concept that I never realized I would enjoy as much as I did until I'd played through the Little Nightmare games. There's something that they can set you up for in these that they can't with just a typical horror game. With a puzzle-focused game, you're paying attention to details. You might even be like leaning in and trying to figure out how to get past the thing. And if you fail, it's not like you just fall off the puzzle or the puzzle just resets or you just land on the ground. No, in a horror type puzzle game, when you fail, there's usually like horrifying consequences. Absolutely loved Little Nightmares 1. Little Nightmares 2 was also really good. The DLC that was in between there was fantastic. The DLC was like almost as good as the game. I won't say anything. I won't spoil anything for people that haven't played it yet or maybe just haven't watched the playthrough. Absolutely recommend the Little Nightmare games. They're phenomenal. And I know there's a third one on its way. I don't think it's out yet, but you can bet your bottom dollar I'll be playing Little Nightmares 3 on the channel. And the last one I got underneath this category, and I was just so excited to play it. You know, there's not too many games on the channel that I played because I wanted to play it. You know, it's just like I picked it, I bought it, and I played it on the channel because I wanted to. Resident Evil 4 Remake was one of those games. I'd played Resident Evil 4 years ago on the Nintendo GameCube, and it was the first time I'd played a horror game, and it was the first time I'd played a zombies game, and it was the first time I'd played Resident Evil. It was a lot of firsts for me, and it hooked me in a way that I had not expected it to. So to get to jump all the way up to current gen technology with the sweet graphics that they could put in there. It was so beautiful to play. I loved it from beginning to end. I just savored every moment of it. And then I played the DLC separate ways, which I had not played before. And I felt like I was getting to see the same story I'd played from just a whole nother side, another angle. And you got to see all the crisscrossing moments that were taking place, which I was completely oblivious to as I was playing through with Leon. Absolutely enjoyed my time with Resident Evil 4, and I can't wait to play some more Resident Evil games on the channel in 2025. So the last list that I've come up with is just everything else. These are all the games that I didn't feel like fit in quite the categories that I had created, and it's not a huge list, so I figured they grouped together fairly well. First on the list is West of Loathing. Now, this is not a finished playthrough, and I haven't touched this game since the beginning of the year, but I had somebody sign up at the Ultra level membership, and in that you get to request a video. So they requested West of Loathing, and I started playing through it, and it was actually really cool. You talk about a slapstick, silly type game, that's what this game is. Unfortunately, it did not perform well on the channel like at all. It kind of bombed actually. My guess is it's just kind of an older game that people probably already watched several playthroughs of and they're just kind of tired of it. But I did play 3 episodes, had a good time. If by some chance there's enough people that would love to see me continue that on the channel, I'm open to the idea, but you guys gotta really make it clear you'd like to see more of this on the channel. One of my absolute favorite games of this year was Hollow Knight. I knew it was a good game. I had heard it was a good game. I'd been told by many people it's a fantastic game. Like every gaming channel out there had a playthrough of Hollow Knight, so I just knew it was gonna be good. I did not know how good it was gonna be and just how much I was just gonna fall in love with it. This is one of those games where I was so many episodes ahead of the channel because I just couldn't get myself to stop playing it. Absolutely loved it. There's still more that I could explore here if I ever wanted to go back to do it. One of my all-time favorite games, one of my favorite playthroughs on the channel, and having you guys coming along and telling me moments where you struggled with a character and I didn't, but then I struggled with somebody that you didn't, and just all the camaraderie that took place in the comment section of every video just made this playthrough super special. Absolutely loved it. I can't talk high enough about Hollow Knight. All right, now we're circling back for the final Daniel Mullins game that I played, Inscription. And I tell you what, you community did such a fantastic job of not spoiling surprises laid forth in this game. It's one of those games that the more you play it, the more features begin to open up and abilities that you didn't see coming before, and subtle little changes that you think wouldn't make too big of a deal, but it turns out to make a really big deal, and there's like countless combinations that you can make. And then I'm not going to spoil anything, but then there are 2 big significant moments in this playthrough I had no idea was coming, and not a single person spoiled it for me in the comment section. I was so proud of y'all. Inscription, absolutely fantastic game. Highly recommend it to anybody who's considering it. The next game that I dove into that I was actually really scared to play is Dark Souls Remastered. Now, I was scared to play it for a couple reasons. One, I had heard that it was a very challenging and hard and difficult game. You know, Dark Souls just kind of has that reputation. In fact, if someone says it's a Souls-like, what they mean is it's gonna be challenging, among a few other things. But what I was really nervous about is sucking at the game and infuriating the community. It's one of those games where the community is very passionate about it, but I tell you what, they are also extremely compassionate and patient, and that was a really cool experience for me. It's like I didn't have people getting mad at me or raging in the comment section. It was more like they were encouraging me to keep going. Don't give up, keep doing it. Maybe try this, try that, giving me subtle little hints, not spoil anything, but man, the comment of don't go hollow, once I learned what that meant, I understood why people kept saying it. It was a really cool experience. Kind of like Hollow Knight, another one of those where it's like, I had fun with the video, I would post the video, and then I had just as much fun reading and replying to all the comments. And it now holds the record as the longest playthrough on the channel, which was super cool to experience. I know I've had a lot of people asking about it, and don't worry, Dark Souls 2 is coming up very soon. Hopefully, if all goes as planned, it'll be happening sometime in January. Oh, The Quarry. Man, this is the kind of game you either absolutely love it or you absolutely hate it, because it's just full of cringe. My goodness. It's horrifying, it's scary, it's creepy, it's got some moments that really get you, but it's almost like the cringe is on such a level that if you don't like cringe, you won't finish the game. The horror aspect of it, you won't be able to enjoy because there's just so much cringe in it. Loved it because it was totally up my alley. Dad jokes, fart jokes, stupid jokes, just stupid decisions. It was great. In fact, it's the only game on the channel so far where I did do a complete second playthrough just so I could see if I could get a different outcome and experience what different choices would make. Now that full 6-7 hours that it took me, or 8 hours, I forget what it was now, I condensed it down to like a 2-hour hot clips moment. So if you just want to see a stupid playthrough of it, it's a one-off video that was added at the end as like a bonus. Highly recommend it. This game was so good. I had a great time and loads of laughs. Ori and the Blind Forest. I finally got to play the first of the Ori games. Now I have the second one and I do plan on playing that in 2025. But this was my first time getting to play one of their games and I've heard the music for years. On my Pandora music list, Ori music pops up on there all the time and I'd be like, man, how can this music be so beautiful for a video game? Well, now that I've played through the first one, I totally get it. It's like you're playing in a paintbrushed environment. Absolutely gorgeous scenery. You can pause it anywhere you want and it's a beautiful scenery. And still one of the greatest moments I experienced in that game was towards the beginning when I had to make my way out of the tree, and anyone who's played it knows exactly what I'm talking about, probably feels the exact same way. Absolutely loved Ori and the Blind Forest, and I'm looking forward to playing Ori and the Will o' the Wisp, I think is the other one, sometime in 2025. Well, if there was one game that I kept getting recommended side by side with Stalker, it was the Metro games. And it's really cool because they do seem similar, but totally different genres. Where Stalker is more of an open world, kind of go where you want, piece the story together how you want to. Metro has more of a linear vibe to it, at least the one that I've played so far. It's almost like if you played a game that was first a top-down view, and then you played another version of it where you were standing in a third-person view with the character. You could see some similarities, and it's like you're seeing it from a different perspective. And I kind of get that vibe a little bit with Metro. It's like we're seeing a very similar type of atmosphere, but in a different format. And I loved it far more than I was expecting to. I've only played through the first one so far. There's 2 more and I absolutely plan on playing those. I forget which one I'm supposed to play next. I think The Last Light, but I'm not entirely sure. But I definitely enjoyed how story focused the game was, and probably my favorite moment through the whole thing was with the librarians. And that's all I'm gonna say. In case you want to play it yourself, just know when you get to the librarians, you're playing with my favorite characters. And the last game I got underneath this category is Dredge. I almost put this underneath lesser known games, but I kind of feel like Dredge is one of those that kind of took off, kind of like Inscription. It's like it became well known enough that I feel like it didn't need to be underneath that category. I had a lot of fun with Dredge. It was kind of fun getting to piece together some of the mystery, what was going on. I've never played a game where they made fishing so much fun. I've heard there's 2 endings to this. I got the bad ending, go figure, but I've been told that there is a good ending. In fact, I was even given the instructions on how to get that good ending. So there might be a bonus video that shows up on this at some point. If not that, I did buy the first DLC recently on a Steam sale, and I hope to play some of those DLCs in the next year. All right, so here we go. Here are the winners that I've picked for each of these categories. And even though I really tried to pick just one game for each category, there's a couple where I just couldn't go with just one. So here we go. For my favorite one-off game, the winner goes to Tattletale. Absolutely loved the game. I was just sweating like crazy the whole way through. The Thank Goodness You're Here was a very, very close second. Again, I think it just dragged on a little too long, but the comedy and the laughs that I was getting in the first part of that game were just so good. It was right there. My favorite for the lesser known title, no competition, Firewatch. And if you've never played it, go buy it and download it right now. You're not going to regret playing through that game. The winner of my least favorite or games not for me category, hands down, Mirror's Edge. I'm still kind of sore on that. If you couldn't tell, even when I was talking about it, I was just like, ugh. But maybe I'll get around to playing the remake at some point. But it's still just a little bit of a too sore of a subject for me to want to do that yet. All right, my favorite choices, and I say choices because I picked 2 out of my series playthroughs that I did this year. Halo 3, absolutely phenomenal, fantastic game, and also Doom Eternal. They're both first-person shooters, but they have completely different feels, and man, they're both fantastic. Absolutely loved them. My top 2 choices, again, I had to pick 2 for this one. For everything else is going to be Hollow Knight and Dark Souls 1. This category honestly had a lot of my favorite games of the year in it. Inscription was absolutely fantastic. Metro, absolutely loved it. With the ones that I would absolutely absolutely have to play again if I could, it would definitely be Hollow Knight and Dark Souls 1. And this is definitely a category I'm going to keep moving forward to, because again, Soma would have definitely taken this for me last year, as well as like favorite game of the year last year. But for me, biggest surprise of the year, the game that I went in kind of with the lowest expectations, but came out loving it far more than I expected, would be The Quarry. The cringe, the corn, all of it was just so fantastic. I was nervous about playing it because I just heard so many people were like, I didn't really like that game. It wasn't all that great. It wasn't for me. So I kind of had really low expectations, but man, when I got in there, I totally understood why they felt that way. But for me, I could eat that dish all day long. It was fantastic, and I absolutely had a great time. All right, there we go, everybody. Those are the games that I played through this year. I had an absolute blast. I can't wait to see what all we can knock out in 2025. All right, hopefully I managed to keep the rambling to a minimum in this, and I hope you guys had a really good time reminiscing about all the great games we played throughout this year. Thank you guys all for your support, for hitting the like button, subscribing, spreading the word. It's just been so fantastic. The channel's growing really well, and I can't wait to see what else going to happen next year. Until next time, continue to be safe out there, buddy. I will see you on the next one.